Good morning, friends of the fraternity and our esteemed viewers. Welcome to the monthly talk series of the Cavalry Roundtable. This morning, the topic of discussion is how are we understanding hard power and do we build up our deterrence? So it is from war prevention to the buildup of a credible deterrence, and why India as a country must invest in hard power. We are privileged this morning to have with us very esteemed and astute military thinkers. We have Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, having been commissioned into six paras. He went on to participate in the Maldives airborne operations. He commanded six paras. He's had a number of exposures in the military operations branch. He was also the Director General Military Operations. He is well aware of the dynamics with China, having commanded 33 corps. After he superannuated, General Bhatia headed the Senjos, an important think tank in our midst. Welcome, General Bhatia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you much.
Then we have with us Lieutenant General Sanjeev Langar, having been commissioned into 62 Cavalry. General Langar has seen all terrains, and he has also been the Colonel GS of the Delta Force. General Langar was in the UN headquarters in New York for 3 years, after which he came back and commanded 69 Armored Regiment. He's commanded an armored brigade in a rapid division. He's a strike corps man, having commanded the Sudarshan Chakra Corps. And thereafter, he's had varied appointments till he headed the DIA as the DGDIA. After which, he was a member of the Armed Forces Tribunal, where he helped many veterans get their due. Welcome, General Langar.
Thank you, sir.
We have Colonel Manoj Chanan. Manoj was commissioned into 65 Armored Regiment. He has participated in Op Pavan in Sri Lanka, along with his regiment, and seen operations very closely there. In the area of Jammu and Kashmir, he helped set up a counterinsurgency school. He's also served in Manipur, and every morning, more or less, Manoj has a piece appearing in our frontline papers. Manoj is a prolific writer and a good military thinker. Welcome, Manoj.
Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, India faces complex threats, both in the north across the LAC from China, where China is hardening its posture on the LAC and building up infrastructure in the TAR region, both in terms of rail, road, and airfields. So we continue to face major challenges from China in the north, despite the talks having been recently held, where there has been a thaw when our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, met President Xi. As far as trade is continuing, and our trade deficit with China is growing. But we need to keep our guard on, because it's only a favorable conventional military balance which is an essential component for ensuring security and deterrence. And this is especially so against China. As far as our Western neighbor is concerned, we have Pakistan. We've had successes in Op Sindoor, where Pakistan has got a clear message. But its grey zone warfare is build-up of its new capability and the very possibility and the threat of Pakistan using TNWs cannot be wished away. To our east, we have a problem brewing up in Bangladesh. We are all aware of the regime that is the interim regime under Muhammad Yunus, which has given rise to belligerent forces which are anti India. Farther east in Myanmar, there are problems. The military junta is losing control, and only in the last week, the rebels have captured a town in South Myanmar. Our relations with Nepal, though presently stable, continue to be a seesaw. In the past, we've had problems with Sri Lanka, which presently are on an even keel. And we have had problems with the Maldives. How will the Pak-Afghan problems impact South Asia security is something that we would request our speakers to touch upon. As I see it, we need an NSS in place because a national security strategy would pave the way of deciding as to what are the core interests of the country, what are the ends that we want to achieve to keep our country safe, our citizens prosperous, and therefore, in terms of both economic power and diplomacy, how are we going ahead? As you're aware, the rupee just a couple of days ago has touched the lowest against the dollar at 90 plus. With that as a backdrop, I'll now request General Bhatia to continue from there and give us his perspective of the whole issue. General Bhatia.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for this excellent, for firstly including me in this platform. Honored indeed, the cavalryman. So you have given out what is required and in many ways. Let me start by saying, the topic is war prevention by credible deterrence. Most of the people in our country and even in the armed forces think that the armed forces are meant to fight wars. Now, I feel that if we fight the war, we already lost the war. Armed forces are meant to ensure peace, not fight wars. If we want a Viksit Bharat, we have a Surakshit Bharat. We've got to look after the well-being of 1.44 billion people, absolutely. And if we're going to fight wars, I don't think that's going to happen. So what we need is a credible deterrence. And for the deterrence, we have defined challenges. We're not like the other countries. We have defined challenges, absolutely. Security challenge defined. They're definite. We have China on the one hand, with whom we share a 3,400 kilometers long boundary, contested. We have Pakistan, a mischievous nation on the west. And then we have the region. So when we look at our region, I think India has got definite security challenges, and how we meet and mitigate these challenges is a challenge in itself. Are we investing enough? No. Are we prepared to meet the challenges? Yes. But we have to look at the future threats which are emerging, future technologies. The threats are in across the continent, starting from gray zone or the low intensity conflict right up to the nuclear domain. So what we look at it, if I may just say so, with China, which is our primary threat, major concern, we need dissuasive deterrence. Dissuasive deterrence to deter China against its aggressive behavior towards India. And we've seen the aggression more so in the last decade plus, especially starting 2020. If I may go back a little, Xi Jinping took over as the president. I think there's some disturbance. Xi Jinping took over as the president and supreme leader on 14th of March 2013. And to put in context, on 28-29 March, when he met the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Manmohan Singh, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Dublin, there was a change a change in the stance of China, where the boundary question, we got uncontested borders in any case, the boundary question was a legacy issue to be resolved at a later stage. But in that pull aside, he told the Prime Minister that we need to resolve the boundary question as early as possible. So that was an indication we should have taken over. And exactly a month later, on 14th of April 2013, we found the first intrusion after 1986, Sumdrongchu, which was in Depsang, right? The bottleneck area, Raki Nala is well covered. So there's been a change. Thereafter, we see China 2013, again September 2014, Chumar, which coincided with the visit of President Xi Jinping to India. 2017, 73-day standoff in Dolam, which we generally pronounce Doklam now. And then 4th of April 2020 onwards, we had the forward deployment of China along the LAC. So what does it indicate? It indicates that there is a driver for conflict. What are the drivers of conflict with China? One of the drivers of conflict is the boundary question, where China wants to resolve the boundary question at its own terms. And it is Mao's dictum, actually. Mao's dictum was to have land borders which were defined, inclusive, not sea, not the maritime borders. Right? Why is it by design default? I don't know. So 12 of the 14 nations, China resolved the borders and the boundary question. The only two left are India and Bhutan is linked to India because the tri-junction, both the east and the west of Bhutan, is linked to India. So we are looking at Xi Jinping trying to resolve the boundary question, and that is how we found in April of 2020 a forward deployment which has not been there earlier, and a very aggressive behavior of China towards India. It's a different story that we stood up to China for the first time. China's strategy is basically to claim, occupy, legalize, integrate, and then exploit. That's what is in Tibet, that's what is done everywhere else. So when you look at China, I think China is the primary concern, and we should look at China from a dissuasive deterrence point of view, where we deter China's aggressive behavior. Now, when you see that, there are two more things which I would like to talk about China. The second is containment of India by China. China also fears a risen India totally. We are a risen India, but a more risen India because it wants to challenge the US for the bipolar world. And it's got strategic concerns and strategic vulnerabilities in the sea lines of communication. 80% of its oil and trade pass through the Indian Ocean and the Malacca Strait, which is dominated by India. So there are strategic concerns, strategic vulnerabilities in India. Now we've got to see the whole thing together and see how we can create a credible deterrence, dissuasive deterrence with China. Coming down to the strategy, I think with what is China, we need something what we call a 4D strategy. One is defend the LAC. We neglected the LAC for very long years. We didn't build the infrastructure. We didn't build our capabilities. We raised two divisions, and then in 2013 we got the sanctions for the aggression forces, which is loosely called the Mountain Strike Corps. But we got the aggression forces sanction on CCS on 17th of July 2013, but the monies never came. The financial backing was not there. The funds were not there. So we had to do whatever we want to do, we had to do inwards. Thanks to China, 2020, when they came in, we woke up and we started building capabilities and infrastructure again in a very rapid manner. So we have to display strength at the LAC. And one of the philosophies along the operation philosophy along the LAC with China is no blinking, no brinkmanship. We don't want to escalate, and we don't want to be seen weak. And China respects strength, and we want to be showing China the strength. So China is the main this thing. One more thing about China. China claims 70,000 kilometers of our territory in Arunachal Pradesh, which it calls South Tibet. It occupies 38,500 square kilometers of our territories in eastern Ladakh. And it's forward deployment Eastern Ladakh 2020. Our focus has been Eastern Ladakh more than Arunachal Pradesh, but we should not forget that China's claims Arunachal Pradesh is there, so we need capabilities in the east also. They are being done, it's being done, but we need it at a much faster pace, in better volumes and better economy and better scales also out there. So capability development against China is what is going to prevent war, which is war prevention, a credible deterrence with China. India-China relations are, it's very complex. It's a set of contradictions. We have cooperation, we have commerce on one hand. And then we have competition, we have confrontation and conflict on the other hand. So how we balance this? And we balance this from a position of relative strength. And that is how we say defending the LAC, dominating the sea lines of communication, bind to balance with nations where we have congruent and convergence of interest, which is basically the Quad, Japan, Australia, and others, and deny space to China in the neighborhood, which is not happening actually. If you look at China, China is a major player now in Bangladesh, in Nepal. Also, it's got advanced talks in Bhutan, Sri Lanka, of course, we all know about it, Maldives. So that is where I think we'll have to take China and spend more monies. We have to purchase peace through preparedness, and for preparedness, we need monies. If we look at our defense budget, China's defense budget is 5 times that of India. Though we have in the recent power index, we are number three. US at about 80, China at 79, and India at 40. But the differential is a bit too much. Getting away from China, China is also using Pakistan as a client state, a proxy. Bangladesh as a proxy. And we talk about a collusive threat between China and Pakistan. I would say it's not collusive anymore, it is collaborative. We see in Sindoor, China was providing them 24/7 real-time ISR. Chinese weaponry was there, Chinese military hardware was there in Pakistan, and I believe that Chinese military experts were there helping out Pakistan also. So China is going to use proxies like Pakistan and Bangladesh to make sure that India is contained and is tied down to the region. China also has strategic concerns in Tibet. We're the only we're one country where we have the Tibetan government in exile, which is not which doesn't go well with China. China's one China policy actually. So China's vulnerability is also the T3, Tibet, Taiwan, and Turkmenistan, and we'll have to be very sensitive to China's vulnerabilities. Uh, Basically, what we're looking at when you look at peace with China, we should also know how much to support Tibet and how much not to support Tibet. Those strategic concerns we should exploit, but we should not go beyond a certain point of time, point of cross the red lines of China. So this is as far as China is concerned. What about Pakistan? No, we should try and resolve the boundary question. The talks are on, but then it says whenever the leaders meet, they talk about resolving the boundary question. There are issues with the boundary. We should resolve it at our own terms, also not favorable to terms. But a good solution would be as is various basis because though the 14th November 1962 Parliament resolution says that we need to recapture the uh, lost territories to China in the 1962 war. So in Eastern Ladakh, they have achieved their almost achieved the 7 September 1957 claim lines. Arunachal is a different story. We hold the watershed. Watershed is with us, and that is we got to hold it strongly. We need to invest more monies into basically our infrastructure and our forces along the land borders. With Pakistan, I think it's a mischievous state. Pakistan, we would like peace with Pakistan, but Pakistan is not likely to give up its proxy war, which it is very, it has done, I think, rather well many years. Till 2016, after surgical strikes, they had to pull back, they didn't cross the red lines. And if you look at 2016 to 2025, after the surgical strikes, we had the Air Force strikes at Jabbar Top, which is a terrorist training camp, which we call Balaport, and then off Sindoor. What has actually deterred Pakistan is that there have been no terror strikes outside of J&K from 16 September 2016 onwards till possibly uh, there will no possibly Delhi bomb blast recently is still under scrutiny. So Pakistan is not crossing our red lines outside of G&K. But when it comes to, it'll keep testing us, and the new normal of punishing Pakistan, punitive actions, preemptive actions, and a proactive strategy are going to pay dividends. But for all these, I think we need a more focused cabinet development approach, which is already there, but I think we need. And last bit, if I may say, so, in the last, in 2025, there were 8 new doctrines which have come about. And doctrines drive organizations, they drive material, they drive manpower, they drive training, they drive leadership. With 8 new doctrines, we also seeing a transition in new organizations which are coming about. We are seeing a push towards indigenization, which is much required. We also seeing major changes in our manpower policy with Agnipath and Agniveers, and our manpower was our biggest strength in any case. And so we are doing a bit too much of transition at a point of transformation at a point of time. I'm sure there must be some transition management roadmap in place, but India has to be present, relevant, and future ready. When we do that, all our transformation which is going on has to be focused, has to be supported, and there has to be a transition management roadmap in place. I think I'll end there for now and take on the next one after some time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General Bhatia. I think you flagged some important issues, especially as far as the South China Sea, the Malacca Strait is concerned, and the infrastructure development that is taking place on the border against China. But the point that needs to be considered is that China is developing its infrastructure in the TAR region at a much faster pace and will be able to match that. That's the first point. Secondly, as you yourself highlighted, we need to build up our hard power. And one of the greatest potent threat that we have from China is their rocket force. And against that, we need our own IRF to be able to counter China. And therefore, we would require greater reach as far as our conventional missiles are concerned. That's another point I'd like to. You have touched on the collusive threat between Pak and China. This is post-op Sindoor is a major issue that we need to really study and see how we are going to counter that. As far as Pak's proxy war is concerned, as you rightly said, that is likely to continue. The Red Fort blast, many feel, is an ingrown problem post Babri Masjid, where our own Muslim fraternity has got radicalized, especially the so-called white collar worker or white collar professional. So this is another point, but the asymmetry against Pakistan remains, and we must build on it. General Langa, may we request you to continue?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vinod, for a very fine overview, which I will most definitely depend on. I would like to take the sail of the boat to another tack and start in a different direction, if I may. I'd like to look at the factors which make a nation great. Why do nations become great? And how do nations become great? And I've got a smorgasbord of issues which I want to put before you. Before I come specifically to China and not in Pakistan, but I will not overlap with whatever Vinod has said, because that's not the purpose of today's talk. The fact of the matter is we have to be seized with the reality that we are a carbon economy and 80% of our hydrocarbons are imported in this country. So let's be very, very clear on how, greatness today is linked to the hydrocarbon economy. We are not out of it, right? We haven't slipped into a nuclear economy. We're a hydrocarbon. And 80% of your hydrocarbons are imported, right? The second thing is there is a need to catch up. There is a need to have speed. There's a need to be indigenous. There's need for capability. How does all this come? It comes by excellence within your country. And it comes by excellence if we follow the model of countries that became great, some of them not so great today, by by the intelligence of your population, the scientific temper of your people, the kind of R&D that you produce. So let's go over these things a little bit, one or two markers. The first experiment or the first successful display of a standardization of war production was 1861, American Civil War. Eli Whitney, who used to produce the cotton gin, the American Civil War took cotton out of the equation of America, and that is how Indian cotton made their fortune during the American Civil War. All imports used to go from India, and that's how Indian cotton became so important, right? Anyway, forget that. Eli Whitney, who used to make the cotton gin, started making rifles. He produced 100 rifles in front of Abraham Lincoln, removed the bolts, removed the barrels, threw them, and he said, you can match anyone to anyone. That's the first example of a mass-produced standardized model, 1861. All right. The first aircraft carrier, worthwhile aircraft carrier, you had a Japanese one, which came out much earlier. But the first worthwhile aircraft carrier was 1924. It was in Britain. And by the time Second World War commenced, Britain had 7 aircraft carriers. Okay. Now, please compare this to our arms industry. Let's say that there was a write-off and only the incentive has started from 2014. The arms so-called private sector, which is supposed to be the panacea for all our production, what have they done to endear themselves to the national cause? Okay. I mean, we are all aware how we are struggling with it. I attended a talk in the CII where the head honcho of CII, fine gentleman, spoke about meeting the requirement of the Indian Armed Forces in 10 to 15 years. What are we talking about? During the Second World War itself, in 4 years of the war, sonar was invented, radar was invented, cybers and codes were invented, and you're looking at 10 to 15 years to meet the requirement when we are not at war. So please be very seized of the fact that the Indian industry, private industry, which is supposed to be a panacea for our capability building, is very, very far off the mark. Recently, we had the cavalry seminar where a particular gentleman was offering us these high-priced drones, and drones are supposed to have changed the whole nature of war. And very correctly brought out by a deputy chief who was attending it, he says the life of a drone is 3 missions. And all you can depend on a drone is to give you one reliable mission. So how much money do you want to park into it? So there is a complete mismatch in what the industry is wanting to produce under Atmanirbharta and fill the requirement of the services who are looking at something which is going to be operational today, tomorrow, with very short timelines. You're just not there. So nations don't become great with a war industry which is not agile, which is not able to invest in deep pockets, and which is not able to produce what the armed forces need, not what they want to market. Right? That's the first thing. What is our education base? I mean, it is a matter of great, I would say to me, disappointment that when a child gets admission in a foreign university 80 years after independence, it's a cause of celebration. We haven't been able to produce world-class universities in this country. Is there a shortage of money? No. You can buy a 190 crore apartment in Gurgaon. There's no shortage of money. But you're not putting your money into education. You're not getting the kind of professors that you should. You're not holding on to your intelligentsia. 35 million is the diaspora of India overseas, and 2.5 million leave this country every year. Okay, a lot of them go on and become CEOs all over the world because they find no opportunities in this country. So your education is not matching up to your needs of capability, national capability. You are producing people who are on escape velocity. The best talent is going out of the country. How are you addressing this aspect of capability building? So the armed forces, I'm not saying that we don't have our faults, they do. you are forced to go for a chewing gum option. You pick up from here, you pick up from there, you pick up from here. But that is not how nations become great. Okay. I could go on HR and education, but I will not do that. Right? One of the visions of Viksit Bharat is to make India an attractive uh, uh, destination to live in. Please have a look at the way our cities and towns are developing like overgrown villages. Are they attractive places to live in? There is, there is every intention to do it, but are we doing it? As a result, you can't attract people from overseas. You can't even keep your own people. So without proper talent, you are not going to be able to develop hard power in the way that it is supposed to be developed. The Indian intelligentsia, very, very vibrant. It is, and it spills over to our universities. There is one problem which universally goes across our intelligentsia, is that most of them have spent their lives in books and libraries, in silos. Very few of them have experience of the real world. Quite unlike the type of intelligentsia that has developed in countries which have unfortunately gone through the world wars and have engaged in wars where people are not only linked to the reality of what's going on, they go to the field, there are people from railways, there are people from industry, they become intellectuals. They've run organizations, they have produced results, and then they get into intelligentsia. In our case, you're in a silo, you go on and you teach in universities, or you become part of the national intelligentsia with very little practical experience. So it's not a question of having voice in decision making. It's the quality of voice that matters today. And the quality of voice, apart from a professional spectrum, which is professional, Army, Navy, Air Force, the wider spectrum, the quality of voice, I have reservations on. Right? The voice may be there, but what is its quality? We have proven to be, over the decades, not very good at our communications technologies. We do not have the ability to influence opinions. Today is a world of information. It's the information age. We do not have that ability to carry our narrative overseas and convince people convincingly. It has been an inherent weakness over decades. It continues. To the best of my knowledge, it is, we're not in that league. Okay. With that as a background, let me very quickly come to one or two aspects of China and Pakistan. Since Chiang Kai-shek, when the first maps were published showing Indian territories part of China, since Chiang Kai-shek, there has been no vision change in the Chinese establishment. The Chinese Communist Party, of course, has, starting from 1919, post the Treaty of Versailles, has engineered its oxygen by being in a constant state of conflict. If you see the history of the Chinese Communist Party, it is conflict after conflict after conflict. It is required for a variety of factors. So today you've got the South China Sea, and you've got this huge contested border with India. It's not going to go away that way. It's going to go away with what Vinod said. When you have dissuasion, not deterrence. Deterrence, so I think zamana chala gaya. The time for deterrence is gone. You have to view it differently today. It has to be dissuasion that if you do this, I will be able to hurt you like this. And to get that fine-pointed dissuasion against China, a lot of work is required. Not that it cannot be done. But let's not be in any doubt that they have had any change of heart or any change of mind. And it is, again, us who took dips in earlier decades. And we had this club of people talking about a mature China rising, which was never there. And we lost so much time because of thinking of a mature rise of China. They are inflexible in their attitudes to us, and that is not going to change unless there is dissuasion. Both China and Pakistan have an envelope. We must be appreciative of this envelope. China's Russia engagement which has matured during the Syrian war has now put it at a level which is exceptional. It is an exceptional arrangement. It's a wonderful arrangement across land borders. And this is only going to power China more and more. And we have to be cognizant of that. As far as Pakistan is concerned, they have worked out a super arrangement with Saudi Arabia, and through Saudi Arabia, the entire Gulf countries, through the Gulf Cooperation Council. So, whatever your considerations are going to be in the next round, you have to consider the fact that they have now networked themselves into the security arrangements of the Gulf Cooperation Council, from where 60% of your hydrocarbons come. So when we look at these countries, we cannot look at them just as a one-on-one. We have to look at their envelope of linkages and the kind of isolation they can bring to bear on you at a time where there is crisis. So today, it's not only important to have weapon and hard capability, it is equally important if you're able to build up that hard capability through dedicated alliances. And we as a nation, very correctly, I think, have never opted to be part of a military alliance. We wanted to be on our own feet and stay the way we are, I think, which is very, very, very true to our ideals. But then you have to find the ability to do it. And especially you have to find the ability to do it when you have two large competitors who both have very large envelopes of reaction and capability. Your question of whether we can match China's development at the pace. When we talk about dissuasion, the development is a focused development. It can be done, but it can only be done if we get our R&D, intellect, and industry get their act going together. It is not a broad-based capability matching that you need to do. If you're able to do selective capability matching and overmatch, you will achieve reasonable dissuasion. Reasonable dissuasion. And it can be done, but you've got to get the act together. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it's a nation which is in struggle with itself, but the military is not likely to change its priorities. It gets a huge amount of mileage out of beating India at every step, and it is building all its blocks, all its alliances, targeting the Indian capability and influence. So these two are going to be fixed in time and space. Bangladesh, I would say, once they decide on having the fresh elections, which are due next year, the new government or the interim government is in a tremendous situation where it can choose a set of priorities. If it chooses a set of priorities linked to its neighborhood, it will lead to the progress of the neighborhood as visualized. If it chooses a set of priorities where it opts either for Pakistan or US, which are extra regional powers, it will take it in a different direction, and possibly the kind of relationships that we will have with them will be quite different. So they sit at the crossroads. But on the ground, let's not be deluded. University after university is being taken over by the extremist party, and it's the universities which are calling the shot right now in the governance of Bangladesh. I'll stop here. We'll go further when we get the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I think you've raised some very important questions and points. The focus of India for research and development, which has been lacking, it's catching up now, but we have long strides to take. And as you rightly said, that the private industry is not putting in enough capital for research and development. Though baby steps perhaps have been taken, but a greater focus is required. And you gave very good examples of the American system, both during the American Civil War and more so when they were preparing for the Second Great War and during the Great War. As far as the China is concerned, they've already rolled out the third aircraft carrier, and their naval output in terms of shipbuilding is outstripping America, and Americans are worried. So that's another area of great concern, despite the fact that we have control or the ability to control the Malacca Straits. As far as China's stance and attitude, as you rightly flagged, especially with their collusion with Russia, is not going to change. And they will continue to be anti India in the long run. And we have to build up and guard against that. Of course, we can build up, as you rightly say, but in specific areas. It's only in the last couple of days that China has unveiled its perhaps best drone, which is a kamikaze drone called the Long M9, which is focused towards Taiwan. And as far as American assessments are concerned, China can fire about 20,000 missiles towards Japan, which are with conventional warheads. As far as Pakistan is concerned, you have rightly flagged the issue about the collusion with Saudi Arabia and the GCC. We need to consider that for hydrocarbon security. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, sir.
Manoj, would you like to add on to what has been discussed so far? Manoj Chana.
I think General Bhatia and General Langar have covered very extensively, talking about how it's no more deterrence but dissuasion. I would like to give a little industry perspective to this issue, because having dealt with the Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives, what I find from the industry side is that they would like to be in the defense sector. They see it very lucrative. It's a very profiteering kind of a business, but they do not wish to invest into R&D. I had a chat with General Shankar. IIT Chennai has got programs where the industry can tie up with them, get involved in the R&D, and then become a development partner, and therefore reap the profits that they so desire. But when given and presented this opportunity, majority folks decided that do not wish to get into that space. And IIT Chennai is also very cognizant of the fact that the big companies like L&T or Bharat Forge, Kalyani's, Tata's, Mahindra's, they do not need this kind of a collaboration because they've got adequate budgets themselves for R&D. Even those companies are not really doing R&D, but they are picking up companies abroad at a very cheap cost and getting that technology into India and therefore calling it Make in India. Now, we really have to be very sure as to where we want to go. I think somewhere in our governance, I'm sorry to say so, but somewhere in our governance, our priorities are a little skewed. We seem to be focusing and making a lot of statements which we cannot fulfill, but at the grassroots level, a young boy, a young man gets carried away by the statements he hears, and he thinks that we are on a trajectory of being one of the strongest nations in the environment. General Langar and General Bhatia have brought out what our weaknesses are vis-a-vis all our neighborhood, and yet we have not spoken about our internal threats that also keep us at a very on a edge, because we have to deal with all of these as armed forces are concerned. And also the fact that we come up with, very wonderful acronyms or names which swing the public into a thought process that probably we have reached the next level of military competence. But without any budgetary support and additional manpower, all this is a hoax. And I think we are fooling ourselves into thinking that we are there where we are not. I think this visit of Mr. Putin that has been over the past 2 days has clearly shown that, firstly, it's put a cat amongst the pigeons, especially on the Western Hemisphere. They thought that India would be pushed into a corner. They would throw tariffs at us. They'll do everything else to make sure that we are not able to act or react, but just cave in. While a lot of positive aspects have been spoken about the Putin visit, but at the same time, I think it's a lot of posturing just to convey a message that we have our options open. So at the end of the day, I think what we really need is a hard think, a decisive action plan of where we want to go, and most of all, make up for the manpower and the equipment that we don't have. We still are struggling with the kind of weapon that we need for the infantryman. Nobody talks about his modernization. We have been talking about FRCVs and FICVs for the last 20, 25 years. Doesn't move an inch forward every year. Each year it's talked about, but nothing moves. So I think we really know where the problems are, but we fail to seek answers for that. And that's all that I've got to say for the moment.
Thank you, Manoj. You have raised some important issues as regarding the interface with our IITs, especially IIT Chennai. Also, that the government needs to ensure proper funding. And Dushyant sir, once we open up the house for questions, we'll take your question first. And therefore, that needs to be taken into account. Before we close, I'd like some closing thoughts from both our esteemed speakers, General Bhatia and General Yanga, on what do you think would be the credible deterrence in terms of hard power capability that we need to develop in the immediate future? And in what time frame do you think that can come about? Once we have these views, then we'll wrap up this discussion and open up to questions. General Bhatia.
So that I think is the key issue. Where do we want to be in the near term, in the mid term, and the long term? So I think we should be looking at somewhere between near and the mid term, which is doable. And what we need is we need structure and systems in place. It is not that it is okay to do emergency procurements, but then we also got to see that it takes time to induct equipment, to identify equipment, induct it, train on it, and exploit it. So we should have a roadmap of transformation, and it should be pragmatic. It should be supported by financial commitments. Actually, our systems need change. If I was to say that in our systems, the authority and accountability is not aligned. The accountability rests with the services, the service chiefs. The authority does not rest fully with them. The authority is with the Ministry of Defense, with the Finance Department, which have got, our financial regulations are more of a hindrance than a support system. Our R&D, even a DRDO, a DRDO lab will keep getting funded if it is not a project. If the project sees the end of the light at the end of the day, they stop getting funded. So there's no incentive to actually, do a complete R&D and give us a completed project. Until there are two more projects with them, they will not complete it. So that is how the FRCV and the FICV and the rifle projects keep going on and on. 20, 25 years will take. So there's no incentive for them to complete a project and give it to us. So what we should be looking at is systems and structures which need an overhaul. We have a DAC which is 500 pages. I really don't know how that is going to work out. So things are different. Where technology is concerned, yes, we need technology, but technology is not a force substitutor. A lot of people sitting in the plains of Delhi in air-conditioned rooms think that technology will substitute a force. No, it's not going to substitute a force. Territorial integrity is a core national interest in our case. We do not accept intrusions along the LC or the LAC. We have contested borders out there. We also have issues with Bangladesh. We have the land border agreement, but then we have issues out there of immigration. We have issues of smuggling, and Nepal also. Again, we have a free borders. So, and Myanmar is a different story. Myanmar, I think we are going wrong out there. In Myanmar, we want to create a BOP-like, organization with border fencing. We have to understand that the Indo-Myanmar border has got people on either side who who have ethnic similarities, who belong to the same tribe. One brother that side, one brother this side. There are 300 crossing places, formal and informal. There's a free move regime in place historically, and now we want to change all that. So I think we should be looking at a very, very pragmatic way of securing India. Without security, without a Surakshit Bharat, we can't have Viksit Bharat. We need dedicated funds. We need a dedicated way forward. And we need to also understand that cyber, space, and information domain need vast investments. Uh, Sanjeev spoke about the information domain. Today, if you see the world, the notion of victory has changed. We should not, uh, if you look at it, Russia, Ukraine. Russia has won, Ukraine is also winning. You look at Israel, Gaza. Israel has won, Gaza has not lost. You look at Thailand, Cambodia, both have won. You look at Off Sindoor, India has won, Pakistan has won. So we have to have information domain where we redefine the notion of victory in a sense. And my biggest fear is in many of our places we underestimating our adversaries. The bottom line is do not underestimate adversaries. We find a lot of narratives that China is declining, China is going to break up, Pakistan is on the brink of um, balkanization, it's going to break up and all. So underestimating adversary, I think, is a crime actually if you look at it. So invest in domains, the new domains, cyber, space, information domain. We are keep our strengths, consolidate upon them in the land, sea, air domains. You need the underwater domain. We need more this thing, and never underestimate your adversary. The last point I will repeat. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jayant Bhatia. I think you raised some very important questions, especially about strategic communication. As to during Ops Sindoor, what was the adversary able to achieve and what could we counter in terms of strategic communications? Also, the need to develop in a more pragmatic manner and look at the near and the mid-term for our build-up and for achieving our deterrence capability. Then, Langa, would you like to add to what has already been discussed?
Thank you. Very briefly, I will prelude my brief remarks by just saying that I possibly am a dinosaur because my elementary reading of the battle between the war between Russia, Ukraine, as well as the Syrian war, which was very prolonged, and what's going on in Gaza, Israel, leads me to the conclusion that I would not like to look at war as a completely transformed domain of no contact war. There are very fine elements of no contact war which have been developed. I mean, drones is one of them. But no contact war is not the currency of war in totality when we look at our environment, which is very, very deeply rooted in territorial integrity. So when I presage this, it leads me to the next fact. You asked a question, how do we have deterrence and dissuasion? Well, one of the strongest deterrence and dissuasions that we have in the subcontinent, which is proven, which is demonstrated, and which is full of fidelity, is a set of armed forces who are designed constitutionally to defend, but have no hesitation in fighting when called to do so. All right. So, taking what Vinod said, that never underestimate an enemy. If the guy across the border is looking at you, the one conclusion he will take from us, irrespective of what all the holes in the other things are, that when this set of armed forces, which is wired completely for defense, right? That was our job, is pushed and decides to fight, it fights and kills. And that has been demonstrated again and again and again. So no one can take your deterrence or your dissuasion for granted. That, I think, is the highest index that you have today, because the excellence of fighting manpower, combat manpower, with whatever they have. As far as putting together something very quickly, I think if you could upgrade C4ISR, just go for C4ISR in its full spectrum and upgrade it very fast, you would have a quantum leap in the kind of precognition you would be able to bring to the battle space. The other things can carry on. Of course, you're going in for new non-contact war, drones, all that. You must do all that. But if you have a hardwired C4ISR, which is pushed into the next generation, you will boost your precognition to an amazing degree. And C4ISR is something you can develop within the country. The brains are here. You got to capture the brains. That kind of software development, that kind of, shall I say, architecture development can be done. It has been demonstrated when we were denied supercomputers and we put together the nuclear program of India under our ex-president Abdul Kalam. All right? It can be done. You need to put your mind to it. I think that is the quickest. The rest, of course, will continue. But I don't think, despite whatever we said, any of our neighbors can take the dissuasion value of the Indian armed forces very lightly. Thank you.
Thank you, General Angad. I think you concluded very well by saying that the strength of the country lies in the ability of our armed forces to fight without question. Your other point about C4 ISR is very valid, but for that we need a robust networking infrastructure. While we are building on it, but if the private sector also adds on, and Colonel Bedi, who's here, who's dealt with this, can later put us wise as to what is required for a network-centric warfare. Manoj, open to questions. First question from General Dushyant. General Dushyant, sir.
Catch me asking questions to these very bright generals whose brilliance is totally unmatched. But I just thought I'll mention a few issues. Firstly, as far as China is concerned, when we talk of China, is Arunachal more important to them strategically, or is Taiwan more important to them? Talking about Taiwan, you see, as the United States is weakening, it's a matter of time before the US gives up. And Taiwan by itself, because of the, shall we say, coercion of various kinds, decides 5, 10 years from now to say, okay, we will give ourselves and become part of the mainland China. Because what little we have seen, at least while I was in service, I also was a DGDIA, the brilliance of Sanjeev came to the fore when he came and he improved the organization immensely. But what we found was that China was investing a lot of money in the politicians in Indonesia, Philippines, and other Southeast East Asian states. Now, the issue is for us to be prepared, do we have to prioritize making Andaman and Nicobar Islands as a very, very powerful and potent, dissuasive, shall we say, uh, platform, like a huge, um, you see these. ये बुढ़ापे में यार साली नाम वाम भूल जाते हैं दीज जिसमें हवाई जहाज वगैरह रहते हैं अपने यार वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 7 ऑफ देम इन यूरोप इन इंग्लैंड इन द वर्ल्ड वॉर सो we have to decide whether we be more dissuasive with regard to protecting Arunachal or to be having flotillas and an establishment in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We understand that China has got Mischief Reef, has got Paracel Islands. It is going in for the domination of the first and second island chain and so on and so forth. But it needs Taiwan for strategic reasons. So what I'm trying to look at and would like to have the views of the pundits here is if and when Taiwan falls, fall it will within the next 10, 12, 15 years as US weakens, whether China takes it by force or whether it decides on its own to join. So what are we going to do about it? So all the more reason that we must develop the Andaman and Nicobar Islands as an aircraft carrier of sorts or a huge aircraft carrier. That's one. Secondly, with China's internal equation, they cannot change tack. They cannot say that, okay, with India we'll have friends and all. Fine, trade is there, which is umpteen number of times and so on and so forth. But the internal politics will demand that they continue to show belligerence towards India. So therefore, all the more reason for being dissuasive. Then, then the other thing, I think, when we talk about Galwan, they learned their lesson. Some salami slicing is fine, but as against 22 of ours killed, they had about 45 or so. But more importantly, with the one-child norm and with them being conscript soldiers and fond of good life, you see their ability to physically occupy our whether Arunachal or elsewhere, because Eastern Ladakh they've already taken what they had claimed. So we have to have a look at that. Then coming to Pakistan, you see, we have to look at an equation where something like Arab Spring happens. Something like what happened on the 9th of May 2023, wherein they stormed the corps commander's residence. But what we need to do is Sam Dam Dand Bhed. We have to pump in enough money and go the whole hog in trying to, shall we say, have the public, remove the military. Because till the military is there, the problems that we have will continue. I may have made a hash of what I was going to say, but I'm sure the views of Vinod and Sanjeev and also Manoj would be very handy for us. Thank you.
Any other questions, please?
So just a thought as we were in discussion, and I just want to express it. I don't know how good, bad, or ugly it is. When we are looking at our neighboring countries and dissuasion, when we see how China really operates, if they have to do something in the country, they actually come in not only with the funds, but they also come in with the contractors and workforce, and they deliver a project. For example, if it's roads or it's a dam or it's a hydropower project, they will actually come and create it and walk away. We tend to be looking at providing funds to our neighbors and telling them that, okay, you go ahead and do it yourself. And variably due to corruption in our region, these projects never sort of fructify. So maybe this is something we really should probably look at and see that if we're able to deliver infrastructure projects, which really helps our neighbors, there could be a change of heart. But that is what I observe really happened in countries like Nepal and Bangladesh for sure. When they saw that infrastructure coming up, they did have a change of heart towards the Chinese.
Dipinder, may I take on?
Please do, sir.
Please do that.
Okay. Just to respond to Jan Chauhan and Apna Manoj. Chauhan sir, I'll only address the aspect of Andaman and Nicobar as you brought up and Taiwan. Firstly, whenever, if, and in the future Taiwan does go in that direction, you can expect a huge focus and a renewed focus on the Indo-Chinese border, Indo-Tibet border. Because after having secured that area in the South China Sea and Taiwan conclusively coming to them as a wedge between Japan and Philippines, the focus will shift majorly towards the Indo-Chinese border. As far as Andaman and Nicobar, I think the game in the Bay of Bengal needs a little bit of clarity. High waters of Bay of Bengal are controlled by Bangladesh. And the high waters of Bangladesh, I mean, the coastline of Bangladesh, therefore, has seen a hell of a lot of big power rivalry. Talked about, of course, the St. Martin Island, which US wanted. But quietly developing has been other projects, in which I must say that we did a fine job. Right? We are presently in collaboration with Japan developing the only deep sea port which is there in Bangladesh, in Moheshkhali. And this contract was given to us to the exclusion of China. Coming to your point, Manoj, this shibboleth that the Chinese move at developing infrastructure has borne infinite dividends is not wholly true. Let me give you the example of Hambantota. The moment Hambantota went south, which we all know, it went south, and Sri Lanka goes into debt, and Hambantota itself is a failure. All right, Hambantota Airport, it gets one flight a week, and Hambantota Port, because of factors which I don't want to talk about, is hardly a choice for any major shipping. It's an absolute failure. Okay. But when Hambantota collapsed, 3 projects of the Chinese simultaneously collapsed. One was in Nepal, hydropower project was cancelled. Second was by Mahathir Mohamad, a port connectivity project he cancelled. And the third was in Bangladesh, Sonada. They had wanted to develop a deep sea port in Sonada, that was cancelled. And immediately the contract was given to India and Japan for Moheshkhali. So let's be clear on the rim. There is a game being played, and India so far is not in a bad position. In fact, the deep sea port that India has in Myanmar, right, is functional, while the Chinese deep sea port at Ramri, Kyafu, is non-functional. They've not been able to control it, and they've not been able to complete it. And now Ramri Island, half of it is occupied by the Arakan army. So there are prospects of having a deep sea port connecting with Ruiling. Ruili is quite distant right now, as far as the Chinese is concerned. Brings us to Andaman and Nicobar. The high waters of the Bay of Bengal overwatch Andaman and Nicobar. They overwatch the eastern seaboard of India. Therefore, undoubtedly, sir, what you're saying, Andaman and Nicobar in the earlier 80s and 90s was seen as the eastern sentinel of the Indian subcontinent. And it was now in its true definition as an eastern sentinel take shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. General SVP would like to ask a question. SVP, sir, request you to be brief.
Thank you, TP. I'm in a camouflage mode due to my attire, but I've heard a wonderful session, and compliments to Vinod, General Langa, and of course, Manoj have chipped in, and so has General Dinesh Chauhan. No, really, what I want to say, credibility being the credible deterrence being your theme today. So there are certain things. One has also heard that we are not right up there because of private industry and our Atmanirbharta is not right up there right now. No doubt about it. But we have, when we talk about deterrence, it is basically a credible deterrence will be through punishment, denial, and resilience, as I would put it. By punishment, I don't think we have that power as yet, the CNP part, but denial, yes, we have, and resilience also. Now, denial is how is it denial possible? I think the salami slicing which China had been doing and hitherto till Eastern Ladakh, perhaps that that now if China does, it will invite our reaction, and we did it well in Galwan. So that lesson is there. We have the capability of denial, and in that Galwan factor itself, Eastern Ladakh, I'll say it was a great show of resilience. So our deterrence is there. Now, how can we do it? You see, we talk about that we are also a nuclear power, and we have got now, like Agni 5 MIRV capability. So we should develop, operationalize that to add to our this thing. We cannot match quantity, but we definitely are there in quality and in this capability of it. Then is the SSNB petrol which we have. We should develop that further. Now, in the conventional, I would say, Pralay, which is there, we should operationalize all these things. We should take them forward. Our joint long range fires, like apart from Pralay, which I mentioned, BrahMos, Nirbhay, Pinaka. Now, BrahMos post Sindoor, we are taking it forward to 800 to 1,000 kilometers, the new generation one, with some tie up with Russia again. So I think that is where our credible deterrence could come to fore. And key issues would be near and medium term, which General Vinod Bhatia has covered and mentioned about it, authority and accountability. So these are the ones which I thought we'll do. Yes, hardened air bases we should have. Our air defense should have that right up to our hardened bases for the logistic nodes, which I think the actions are on. Now, where we lack in all this credible deterrence is loud talk, but action, we fall short of it. That willpower is lacking. I think we need to learn, our friends need to learn from Israel. We always give mention of Israel, but now when we talk about it, we should take it forward. One Uri or one this Sindhur is not the end of it. It is just a show of it. So we have to do that. And I think Putin visit, maybe a lot of showmanship in it. I think we can only be sure-footed if we are with Russia and their unlimited extent of strategic partnership aligns us with China in the RIC concept, I would say, which can be helpful to us. It can also keep China in check. So this much I wanted to mention, and not really a question. Questioning such great luminaries is a very difficult exercise for me. Thank you very much, Dipi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. And thank you for your focus on building up the rocket force and the artillery. Vinod, would you like to say anything before I wrap up?
Thank you. So just take 3 minutes. What General Chauhan has said and what General SP said, I think they're totally on target. China's strategic, at the cost of reputation, China's strategic vulnerability and concerns are Indian Ocean, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands is a fantastic base to ensure a dissuasive deterrence with China. But it has also to combine with our strengths along the line of actual control, because China also indulges in political warfare. When I say political warfare, it means that if we want to put pressure on our, we are a democratic country, on our political regime, it is the line of actual control which will come into play. That is one part. Second thing is about the Taiwan. Absolutely, Sanjeev has just covered it. Jen Chuan said China is looking at 6 wars. The first war is the unification of Taiwan, and the period going 2026. The second war is capture of the second chain of islands, the Spratly Island, 2026-2030. The third war is reconquest of South Tibet, as it calls it, 2030-2040. So we have a little time, I suppose. And the fourth is the reconquest of the Senkaku Islands, and the fifth is unification of Outer Mongolia, and the sixth is China takes on Russia. So that is what China is, in one of the things is looking at. And what India needs to do is we got to be looking at military as a not only dissuasive deterrence, but we are a regional power, and especially when we come to Bangladesh and we come to other countries, we should not be seen as our soft power should not be seen as a soft state. I feel that we have to be, we got to use our hard power, and we should not let our, the anti-India sentiment, India get out sentiment, uh, investing in the people for long term is fine. But they should also have that carrot and stick. They know that if they go wrong, we should stop the oil pipeline, we should stop the power, we should stop the land ports. People should feel the pinch of that anti-India sentiment. That's what I say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vio. If
So
somebody
General Umang
add
has
on,
got a question to ask or is wanting a
yeah,
clarification.
Manoj, the last
Panelists,
question.
I have a question that we generally talk about. We should cooperate, compete, and have an adversarial relationship with China. Now, looking at where we are today and where China is, and looking at the trajectory, what are these phases of cooperation, confrontation, and competition? How do you put it in timelines? Because this will decide your strategy to match Chinese strength. Thank you.
Sanjeev?
Umang sir, to my way of thinking, the the uh, the era of structured approaches have gone. This is an era of simultaneity. And all the ingredients that you have outlined so very correctly coexist together. And they have to be dealt with together in whatever genre you are or in whatever paradigm you are with China. There is no difference between the three, and nor can they be in the 21st century. That is why earlier nations had schizophrenic foreign policies, right, with one or two focuses. Today, you have to have a foreign policy with multiple focuses, with the same country. With the same country, you can be locked in a conflict in an international fora. When I say conflict, I'm not saying a war. You can be cooperating on a particular commodity. You could be importing, you could be exporting, you could be denying access, you could be allowing access, all in different spectrums of our existential, shall I say, relationship, but all happening together. So as far as China is concerned, you will compete, you will cooperate, and you will prepare for conflict altogether, sir. There are no timelines to my way of thinking. Thank you.
If I may, I'm audible?
Very much so, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you. With China, it has to be, we are hurt. The 2020 inclusion have hurt us. But our policy can't be anti-China. It has to be pro-India. How much we gain. So we cooperate where required. We compete where required. We confront where required. And we ensure that our national interests are furthered, they're looked after. We secure our strategic interests, and that is where I think it is where India has to be smart enough to understand what China needs and what China does not need. Presently, I think China needs India uh, because China is challenging the US for a bipolar world. It needs India. It can't be, if it doesn't need pro-China India, it needs actually a neutral India, if not pro-China India. And that is why I call the 2020 inclusions by China as a Himalayan blunder. And that's how I think they've gone back because they can't be diverting from their national aim of being a superpower. They want to make the rules rather than be part of the rules-based world order. And India also should be following that. We should be asserting ourselves and not only following the rules as based by the big clubs, but now we should be part of the big clubs making the rules which benefit India, which benefit 1/6 of the world's population. Thank you.
Manoj, last question.
So no more questions, sir. I think everybody's.
So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank the panelists for their very interesting and analytic views, and for all the viewers and the questions, both from General Dushyant, General SVP, and General Umang. Thank you very much for attending today's talk of the Cavalry Roundtable. Good
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thank you.